All right. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Unfortunately, I'm using this headset mic, and unfortunately, this is as high as it goes. So if anybody has any issues hearing me, still let me know. I'll try to just speak up if that's the case. But anyway, so tonight we're doing a workshop on weighted trainers and how to use them. My weighted trainer is going to be this sledgehammer. I can talk to you more about that a little bit later on and why I chose that particular device. Yeah, we're gonna do like safe usage, do some exercises and things like that. But first we'll do some normal warm-ups. We'll start with some stretches and then do some warm-up cuts as usual. So let's go ahead and do our regular warm-up stretches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, somebody's joining. Give me a second. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is harder to do in German than I thought it would be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Everyone grab your sword-like object. We'll salute in and then do warm-ups. I'm going to use this silly indoor trainer thing from Purple Heart because that's what I have space for. Just Okay. Scheitelhau to the skull. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a long point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All the way down to Elber. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right Oberhau. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Switch your feet. Left Oberhau. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Left Oberhau, right Unterhau. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Switch your feet. Right Oberhau, left Unterhau. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Just let somebody in. Okay. Mittelhau. Starting on the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Switch sides. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The remaining cuts, I think I'll do an abbreviated version of them. So let's go into Ox on the right and do an Oberhau. 1, 2, drei, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. From right Nebenhut, Oberhau, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is next. Yes, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Up into Ox on the left, Oberhau from there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Left Nebenhut, Oberhau, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. I think we'll end warm-ups there. This class is more cutting focused than thrusting. So sorry, Peter. I know you think longsword is a thrusting weapon, and you're probably right. But this is more about cutting. Okay. Let me just get my notes squared away because my e-reader went to sleep. So not very helpful there. Okay. So today's class is on weighted trainers, how to use them in my own understanding of that. So first things first, I want to make sure everybody knows that I am not an expert at this. I'll be going just based on my own understanding and what I've learned so far. I've been doing HEMA for, about 4 years now? And I've been doing JSA for less time than that, maybe about 1.5 years, 2 years. And I think in that entire time, I've had one single class on weighted training. And there aren't a lot of books out there about it either from what I've seen. So I'm kind of going based on what I've learned on my own and what I've learned from the sources I've been able to find, as well as some small amount of in-person instruction when I've been able to get it. So just bear that in mind. I'm not an expert any more than anyone in this class is. I just so happen to have kind of flagged it as an interest of mine, especially with the pandemic, because I've found that with a weighted trainer that is appropriately sized, I can actually use it indoors. So that's one reason why I have this, because I can actually swing full overhead. You probably can't see my ceiling, but even if I hold it at the end, I don't reach the ceiling, and I'm kind of tall. So it's good for that. But yeah, I'm not an expert. I'm also going to be talking about how to use this thing safely. insofar as I understand that. And again, I am not a doctor. Well, I am, but not that kind of doctor. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Just know that that I am trying to help you to do weighted training effectively without hurting yourself. But if you find that anything I'm saying here tonight is wrong or dangerous, please do let me know that so that I can correct it for the future and correct my own understanding. And of course, don't do anything that that you feel is dangerous or bad for your body. So with that out of the way, so why are we talking about weighted training and why do we do it? What are the goals? Well, the first thing, well, okay, one of the sources that I found for this, by the way, and the one that I'm going to be using for some of the more concrete material is this Spirit of the Sword by Nakamura Taisaburo, who was the founder of the Nakamura school of Batodo. So he knows what he's talking about, obviously. It's actually one of the few written sources that I've found from an authoritative perspective, and it's only a very short chapter. And he says that the purpose of using a weighted trainer is to train the grip. That is the primary goal, is to train the grip. And one way that happens is you can't, it's so heavy that you can't just kind of go loosey-goosey with the grip. If you don't have full control over the object, then you won't be able to stop it properly, and you may injure yourself. So it kind of naturally trains you to grip the weighted trainer properly in order to make sure that you have control over it. And in doing so, you train yourself to grip a sword properly, because it's really the same idea. It's just that this is heavier than something like this, or a long sword or a katana, intentionally so. And in fact, the weighted trainers traditionally have been something like 2 to 3 times the weight of a sword trainer, so that you can train these habits. So when we're talking about training your grip, we're talking about it in sort of 3 contexts. The first is during the cut. You might actually need to change your grip during the cut. So if I start here, my grip is not fully engaged on the bottom. I guess maybe if I show it with a sword trainer first, if I start here, then there's some play in so that in my grip, so that I can actually get it started moving. So it does change throughout the motion. Of course, it's going to be different up here because my grip is fully engaged. So during the full motion of the cut, your grip will change so that you can manipulate the sword. The next thing, and probably the most important part of it, is stopping the sword from moving. So when you complete a cut, you want to stop the sword exactly where you want it to be, and in particular, something that we all know as HEMAists is there's a tendency to hit the floor. So I'll come back to that in a second, but you don't want the what Tristan would call sort of the spongy brakes. You want full control over stopping the sword where you want it to stop. And there are forms of fencing that actually train that specifically to stop just before the target and so on. So stopping the sword from moving is, of course, a big component of safely using a sword. And follow through is another element. So if we just cut to the target, that's going to be very different from cutting through the target. And that feels very different with a weighted trainer because With a weighted trainer, it just keeps moving. So whereas it might be easy enough for me to stop a sword down here where I actually want it to end, a very heavy weighted trainer might want to keep going. So getting the feel for that and what your grip does during the follow through is also useful. So grip is the first goal of using a weighted trainer. The second one is fitness. So if you use it regularly, then you can use it for strength training, strengthen the muscle groups that are important for doing swords. And the third is body mechanics, improving your body mechanics. So training your core, training your extension, and evidently this was not the right device to use for my notes because it keeps shutting off. So training your core, training extension, and training out the inefficiencies. Sorry, folks. And once you get used to the feel of the weighted trainer, then you can kind of use that in your sword training as well. One thing that I found to be extremely useful actually in learning how to engage my core is to use the weighted trainer, get a feel for how the weight moves, and then imagine the tip of my sword, as a sword trainer, a long sword trainer, whatever, imagine that tip being heavy because I know what it feels like to swing a heavy object through space. So I can then take this and imagine the tip to be heavy, and that helps me to cast out more. It helps me to use my core more than my upper body. So actually having a feel for like some internalized knowledge of what that feels like can be really useful for training that aspect of body mechanics. So what I want you to do tonight, and what I've kind of convinced myself to do over time, is to not try to swing this like this, but rather the other way around. So I'm not going to try to use the weighted trainer the same way I would normally use a longsword, because I might be using the longsword wrong, and I might injure myself with something so heavy. But the inverse of that, instead, I want to use the weighted trainer the way it needs to be used, the way it demands to be used by just having as much weight as it does, and then once I get a feel for that, I can use that to inform how I should move a longsword, the sort of the proper ways of moving a longsword, or any other kind of sword. So that's kind of the big idea is don't swing the weighted trainer like a sword. Swing a sword like a weighted trainer. So as we go through this, I want to kind of approach it a certain way. The first thing that to always keep in mind is to listen to your body. If you're in pain, stop. If you are doing something, again, like I said before, that you feel is dangerous or that isn't working for you, stop and break it down and examine it. Don't keep just going because you think that's how it needs to be done. That's not what this is about. This is about learning how to use swords more safely, and you can do that when the weight is exaggerated. That kind of tells you where like the ways that you might not be using it safely. But listen to your body first. Don't injure yourself. It can be really easy to injure yourself with a weighted trainer if you don't kind of pay attention to what your body is telling you. The next thing is you want to go with the momentum of the object. So like I was kind of demonstrating before, I can kind of stop this here, but that kind of takes some practice to get a feel for how that's going to stop, especially if you haven't really done this before. You want to make sure to just kind of let it go. And we will kind of do a sort of a flow exercise like this a little bit later to kind of get the feel for that. That'll help you to feel out the follow-through of a sword cut as well. So go with the momentum and then you can kind of dial it in later once you're a little bit more used to working with a weighted trainer. So in terms of your body, posture, and so on, I want you to try to relax your upper body as much as you can. I know that sounds hard, especially when you're working with something heavy. So what I try to kind of imagine, try to keep in mind, is to relax my shoulders. My shoulders are always really tight anyway. So I want to try to relax my shoulders and keep them down. And one way that I can do that is to kind of just let gravity take the sword, take the trainer. So just kind of as a demonstration here, I'm just going to kind of do a vertical cut here. I don't know if you can really see me. That's a little bit better. I'm just going to mostly let gravity take this. I'm not really going to force it with my arms. So here. So my upper arms actually feel really relaxed right now. I'm consciously relaxing them. I'm not naturally that way by any stretch. So just kind of like get it in motion and then just let it fall. It does take a little bit of doing to kind of heft it upward, but then once it's about here, I can just let it fall. And as long as I'm stopping it, it's okay. So that helps me to relax my upper body, especially my shoulders and my traps, by just kind of letting gravity do the work. So since you're trying to train your core by using the weighted trainer, you want to try to relax your upper body and let the momentum of the trainer do the work. Let it do the work. And then later, once you are able to kind of let the weight of the sword do the talking and let it do its own job, then you can kind of help it along by giving it some extra oomph with your upper body. But I think it's important to kind of get that, to let the tool do the work first, in order to kind of unlearn all the habits of using our upper body and using our arms too much. So yeah, listen to your body, go with the momentum, relax your upper body, and then we're also going to try to identify and eliminate any inefficiencies in our motion. The best example I have of that is if I do kind of like an Oberhau, Unterhau motion here. If the first time I was doing this with a weighted trainer, I was kind of all over the place. So my upper body was kind of wobbling back and forth. Let's see if I can make this happen. So you can see that my torso is kind of going all over. But that's inefficient. So I was told to try to keep my my center line still. So, and now I can't do it properly. Look at the video, but it's better than it was before. I think my center line is more or less still, but the trainer is moving around it, and my arms are kind of swinging like a pendulum. So those kind of inefficiencies are wasted energy, and you're probably using muscle groups that you don't really need to. So you want to try to eliminate those. I'm going to just have to keep putting in this password. I did not realize that would go to sleep so quickly. Anyway, new devices. Yay, Christmas. Okay, so that's sort of our approach. And the way that I kind of go about training with a weighted trainer to try to get the most out of it. So let's see. So next I want to move on to some exercises. Now if you don't have a weighted trainer, that's okay. I want you to try to use something a little bit heavy though, So if you have something that you can swing overhead, like if all you have is a fetter or something, that's fine, but try to use it gripped at the end because then it'll feel heavier. The feel of it here versus here is the subject of another lecture. I'll spare you tonight. But in any case, so if you can manage to swing something that feels a little bit heavier than your average sword trainer, or than what you're used to, then that will help you to get that feel for things. If you can't, then that's okay, but try at some point to try out these exercises with something heavier, because then it feels different, and you can kind of internalize the lessons differently if you have that extra weight. Something I just realized I kind of didn't come back to, and I meant to with grip, is with the spongy brakes. The reason we hit the floor is because our grip is kind of breaking. So we go from this side. So the proper grip is to have both of these muscles on the handle. And if it slips and only one of them is on the handle, then I used to grip a longsword this way. And I had a lot of problems. Now I'm used to gripping it this way, and I don't hit the floor anymore. But you'll find that with a weighted trainer, it's super important to get that grip right. Because if I come here, I stop here. That is about the right height, by the way, to stop. The blade should be about knee height. Not all the tip shouldn't be all the way to the floor. But if I let my grip break to more of like a handshake grip, then watch what the weighted trainer does. It's pointing at the floor for one thing. If I let that weight go like that, I'm losing control of that object. I might hit myself in the legs or something else, but even if I don't, I might drop it. But also, look at my wrists. That's not healthy. You will get injured this way if you keep that up with a heavy object for a long period of time. So make sure when you're stopping the sword, you've got that back pad on the handle with both hands. And if you're not in the habit of that, I would encourage you to work on that specifically. I had to work on that for quite some time to break the habit of gripping like this. And now it's second nature, but it took me a while. So that's something to keep in mind with this as well. That's a really easy way to injure yourself if you're gripping the weighted trainer wrong. So, okay. We are running behind schedule, so I apologize for that. I'm going to kind of just keep going, though, and if anybody needs to drop out, then feel free. Just so you know where we're going with this, we're going to spend some time doing exercises. After that, we're going to do some stretches right after we're done with the physical activity, and then I'll talk some about choosing a weighted trainer if you want to buy one for yourself, and then questions and so on, might just move that to Discord. Okay, so let's do some exercises. The bulk of these are out of this book, The Spirit of the Sword. So there is one that I added that's kind of a variation on those. I'm going to do them in the order that they appear in that book. It seemed to me like they were presented in that order for a reason, although that reason was not stated. So we're going to stick with that. So the first one is two-handed cuts to center. So we're going to start at long point, and then we're going to come up and around, overhow to long point, and then up and around to the other side. So from the side, long point, around, and around. We'll do 10 of those. Okay. Ready? Sorry, we're starting in long point. Eins. Und. Zwei. Und. Drei. Und. Vier. Und. Fünf. Und. Sechs. Und. Sieben. Und. Acht. Und. Neun. Und. 10. Und. I should mention that this is more compact than the weighted trainers you'll see in dojos, which are quite a bit longer. In the pictures in this book, he's actually going way around his head. So you can make that an exaggerated motion. I meant to do that, and I forgot for the first few iterations, but the more exaggerated motion will also help you to feel out the weight and how that makes a difference. By the way, I know that a lot of the motions we're doing here are not what we've been taught to do with a sword, because the motions are too big or something else. But this is different. This is a different kind of training. This is not sparring. This is not cutting. So don't worry about that stuff. You can always still apply those lessons when you have a sword in your hands, but then you'll also be able to apply the lessons that we learn here. This is a different context. Can't hear me? Mic is still registering on my end. How about, can everyone else hear me? Okay. Yeah, yeah, sorry. I'm not going to type this because it'll take too long. But yeah, the volume only goes so high. It's already boosted as much as it can be. So sorry about that. But yeah, please do let me know if I drop. I thought maybe the Bluetooth disconnected or something. But okay, cool. Where was I? Yeah. So we can treat this differently than a sword in that respect. We're not looking for efficient motion like you would want in a cut or in a combat situation. We're looking to use the weight to train in different ways than what we are used to doing. So, okay, cool. So the next exercise is basically the same thing, but one-handed. So one-handed cuts from center to center. We're going to kind of go off to the side there, and like that. You're going to want to, if you have something like what I have, you might want to choke up. Put the center of the balance point, the center of gravity, closer to your hand. That'll make it easier to move. Just be wary of the handle. Don't want to knock into yourself. But I'm going to choke up because this is a bit heavy for one-handed usage. So cuts to center. We're going to do right hand first, and then we'll do left hand again. We'll do 10. So, eins. Und. Zwei. Und. Drei. Und. Vier. Und. Sechs. Und. Sieben. Und. Acht. Und. Neun. Und. 10. Und. Okay. Wow, that one's tough. And to protect my wrist there, when I go around, I'm just kind of like letting it fall. Continuing to grip with my fingers, but I'm letting gravity do the work when I do that. Okay, left side. Eins und zwei und drei und vier und fünf und sechs und sieben und acht und neun und 10 und and I evidently wasn't relaxing my upper body enough because I felt that right in my shoulder. Again, still working on this myself. Okay, cool. All right, so next exercise is an exaggerated vertical cut. So you're going to have to do whatever you have to do in your own space. Unfortunately, not everyone has the ceiling clearance to do a vertical cut, especially if you're using a full-length fetter. But what we're doing here is, and I hope this headset doesn't fall off of me, not just a vertical cut. I'm going to actually widen my stance here to more of a horse stance. We're going to go all the way back as far as we can. So here and down. Try to keep your back straight. I just bent my back too much. Here, down. So the way I kind of think of finishing this is I think of those carnival games with the sledgehammer. Boom. Okay, so you want to bend back as far as you can safely do and keep your balance. And you want to, this will help you to feel how to use your abs, use your core to get get the sword moving and get that forward arc going. Sorry, this is having a bit of a tendency to fall off when I bend over. Okay, so I'll do 10 from here, or 5 from here, and then 5 from the side, like I was doing before. Okay, I'll move back a little so you can see me better. Okay. All right, 10 of these. Eins, zwei, drei, vier, fünf, sechs, sieben, acht, neun, 10. You feel that here? I do. Okay. Next, those are actually really good for even if you're just doing it with a sword to kind of, if you kind of forget the feel of things. It's mostly in the body anyway, not so much dependent on the tool you're using. So those can be useful to just kind of get a refresher of the core sort of crunching motion for a vertical cut. Okay, let's do some descending diagonal cuts. So we're going to do those like this. We're going to do, I think we're starting, forget if we're starting from long point. Let's just say we're starting from Von Tag. We're going to do an Oberhau, and then transition like this, and then the other side. So I actually going to need to turn sideways for this to get enough clearance. So I'm going to start left foot forward, and then step into the cut, and then kind of step into that here. I guess on the next transition, because of space constraints, you might want to step backward. Okay, actually, let's start with the right foot forward. We can cut in place and then step to transition. Okay. And eins und zwei und drei und vier und fünf und. I stepped a little early on that one, so you can kind of diagnose some of these issues as you go. Sechs und sieben und acht und neun und 10 und. Okay. So I think the tricky part with that one is kind of the transition here feels really awkward to me. Just again, go with the momentum. Let the hammer do what it needs to do, as long as you're not throwing it into your TV set. Don't hurt your wrist here, because it's really easy to get overly caught up in edge alignment that you would have for a cut, and then get your wrists in a bad position. So especially until you're used to it, don't worry too much about edge alignment. Be safe first, and then once you are used to the way your trainer behaves in your hands, then you can start adding those other components. Okay. I'm going to try to go without my notes at this point. Okay. Next exercise is a variation on that one. So we're going to do Oberhau and Unterhau. So here, don't step yet. Unterhau, then transition. Here, there. And again, don't worry too much about edge alignment, because keeping good edge alignment here, especially on this side, I've found for me, is really tough to then get the momentum to carry through safely. Okay, so we'll go and do, I think, just 5 of each side, or five full rotations of that. Okay. Eins und zwei und drei und vier und fünf und. Okay. Last but not least, Mittelhau. Be careful with this one. It can be really hard to get a good horizontal motion and keep this in a safe orientation, because the head of my hammer is tending to drop down. So I don't want to swing like this. I want to swing it in a horizontal orientation. You just need to go slow if you need to. Just need to maintain control the whole time. And it's not the easiest thing in the world with one of these. So, okay. Eins, zwei, dry, fear, foof. Notice that I'm not worrying about keeping it too tight in here. I'm letting the momentum carry behind me. I'll actually do this from the side now so you can see that. I'm going to switch sides and start from the right now. Zex, Sieben, Acht, Neun, Zehn. I find that that one is especially a little bit easier if you extend. Make sure to extend. Okay, so that's all the exercises. I found that that some of those can be really helpful in getting the feel for the weighted trainer and getting the feel for the grip, how to stop the sword, how to properly follow through. So I hope that you can all also use those to your advantage to kind of get a better feel for how to use the weighted trainer and how that can be then transferred to the rest of your sword practice. So let's do some stretches. We're all good and warmed up. I know that I'm going to need to stretch, and you probably will too. I know that the first handful of times I worked with a weighted trainer, my upper body was killing me because I was using it too much. So let's start with some arm stretches. We can do some of these first. We haven't gotten moving too fast today, so we don't really need a ballistic cooldown necessarily. So static stretches are probably mostly okay. So let's do across the body here. And in this one, make sure, try to fight to keep your shoulder down. Not like this. That's not really doing you a whole lot of good. Drive that shoulder down. Keep the elbow straight if you can. And that'll help out. At least I find that it does. Okay, other side. Okay. This one here. Get that tricep and the shoulder. And then tilt to the side a little bit and get the lats. Okay, switch sides. Okay. Let's do the neck stretch. We're going to swing our hands around, grab your left wrist with your right hand, and pull. And then tilt your head towards the chicken wing. I like to turn or rotate around my nose for this one. And then look up. And down. This one's great for the traps. So if you're doing a lot of upper body strength work, then it can be really handy. So switch sides, grab your right wrist with your left hand, tilt, and look up, and down. Okay, and since we are supposed to have been exercising our core, let's try to stretch that out too. So the way I'm going to do that is to kind of plant my feet wide here, and I'm just going to tilt over backwards. I'm going to put my hands on my hips here, and then drive my hips forward to keep me balanced, and just go back as far as I can and try to get a stretch all the way through here, all the way up through the chin. Okay. And might want to bend forward a little bit to get a little bit of a counter pose. Stretch out your back a little bit. Okay. So if you need to do more stretching, feel free to do that. But I at least wanted to get some stretching in to make sure that that everybody is not too terribly sore tomorrow, or for that matter, later in the week for 1,000 cuts. So, which by the way, the last time I did 1,000 cuts, after having done stuff like this for a while, I actually found for the first time that mostly what hurt afterwards was my abs, was my core. So I'm hoping that'll be the case this week too, and that I won't overuse my upper body. Okay, so last thing on my list here is how to go about choosing a weighted trainer. So let me skip to the end of my list. I don't know why I didn't put this first, and tell you why I chose what I did. So I didn't really know what I should be choosing. This is a 4-pound, they call it an engineer's hammer because with this hammer you can engineer anything. So it's 4 pounds. I chose that weight because it's heavier than a longsword. Most of the longsword and fetters out there are under 3.5 pounds, usually between 3 and 3.5. So I wanted something heavier. What I did not take into account was the balance, because in a longsword, the pommel is a significant portion of the weight too. So obviously in a sledge, all of the weight is concentrated in the head. So this feels very different than a fetter or a longsword. And at first, it was maybe a bit too heavy for me. They do make these engineer hammers in lighter weights also, like 2.5 pounds. So that might be a good range to start with. I wanted something that I could swing over my head in my apartment. I wanted something with a handle that I can get both hands on comfortably, but I can also use it in one hand by choking up, and the handle isn't too long. If I kind of swing this around, then it's not too bad. You can do this with a full-size sledgehammer too, but the handle is going to get onerous and it's going to get in the way. So this is a 4-pound engineer's hammer with an 11-inch handle for reference. And those are sort of the main considerations. I chose one with a wooden handle. There's a lot of hammers out there with rubberized grips, and I figured that would kind of be a bad experience if I need to choke up, because a lot of them have like a grippy handle right here where you would normally put one hand, but I'm using it differently than most people. So, and I wanted something with an oblong cross section of the handle, so that I could have some semblance of edge alignment. Now, I don't know how important that is. The weighted trainers I've seen for sale on the market have mostly had a round cross-section in the handle, and that might actually have something to do with how you're supposed to train with it, to do sort of that ringing out motion to stop the sword. You start with, at least in Bato-Do, you start with your arms wide, and then you come in. You sort of do that ringing out motion as the sword travels, and that might be a little bit easier to train with a weighted trainer that has a round cross section. But then this will mimic a sword more closely. So I like having the indication of edge alignment, so that I can know that when I'm doing an Unterhau and I do it like this, I'm doing something wrong. If I do it like this, then I'm probably a little bit better off. So that's a personal choice of mine. I haven't seen any recommendations one way or the other about that particularly. So the weight. So as I said, I chose this to be heavier than a longsword. Started off maybe a little bit too heavy for me. I've adjusted to it over time. When in doubt, go lighter and work your way up. The recommendation in this book, the Spirit of the Sword, is they quote the weights in traditional Japanese units, manmei, I think, and then convert it to kilograms, and then I converted to pounds, and so the range that they quote is between 2.5 and 5 pounds. I think 5 pounds is maybe a little bit much unless you're only using it in two hands. If you want to use it in one hand, I would go lighter for sure. It also kind of depends on how you're using it, and the balance is going to be different depending on exactly how it's constructed too. Most of the weighted trainers, the Tenran bow, are like very long, so it's going to be a different balance than something like a sledge. But the range that they quoted, they said that you want a lighter weight one for if you're used to doing kendo and used to training with shinai, which are very lightweight. You want something about 2 to 3 times the weight of a shinai, or go with a somewhat heavier one if you're used to doing iaido, or something with a katana, which is going to be heavier. And they go with like 2 times the weight of katana with all the fittings. I think twice the weight of a fetter is a little too much. That'd be like 6 pounds or more. I think that could get dangerous real fast. But I think that if you want something that would be a good trainer for a longsword specifically, for two-handed sword arts, then I think a 4 pound 4 pounds is about a good weight. You just might not be able to use it in one hand right away if you haven't worked on strengthening your grip already. So this, by the way, I bought on Amazon for like 25 bucks. It was super readily available. So yeah, that was my choice. But if you want to buy a commercial one, the one that Peter has is available on 9 Circles, which is a Budo shop out of the UK. And Nihon Zashi, the folks that make the Gekken swords, they also do custom Tenran bow weighted trainer orders, and you can customize the length and everything to your needs. So the overall lengths, the ones that are available out there that are just made of wood, are probably going to be a bit longer so that they can be heavy enough. The one on 9 Circles is, I think, 2 feet long, which, this one has an 11-inch handle, so somewhat under a foot. I guess probably looks to be about a foot to my eye. So that works for me in this space. But your mileage may vary. So that's about all the information I have for you on that. But if you want to run anything by me, if you're thinking of picking up a weighted trainer to suit your needs, then feel free to drop me a message if you need any input. I'd be happy to help with that as such as I can. So, okay, there was a ping in the chat here. Yeah, Kat just linked the 9 Circles weighted trainer, and yes, that is the one that I was thinking of. So that is the one-hand Suburi Boken. Suburi is essentially training with a heavy sword trainer. There are these Suburito, Suburi Boken, that are just like basically a really fat Boken, a really fat wooden sword as well. And people will use those also to kind of do strength training, do basic cuts or repetitive cuts with just a heavier sword trainer for fitness purposes. But yeah, this one is Well, you know something? It's listed in grams, and I can't do the conversion off the top of my head, but I want to say when I was looking at this before and choosing my trainer, this clocked in at around 2.5 pounds, like 2 to 2.5, and it's about 2 feet long. So I wanted something that was more condensed in size so that I wouldn't hit my ceiling, and I wanted something heavier as well. But this one that's available on Nine Circles is also intended for one-handed usage. So if that's what you're looking for, then that actually might be a really good choice. Just be aware that the shipping rates on that shop can be pretty high. So, anywho, Kat says that trainer is a little less than 3 pounds, so I wasn't too far off, but I was a little bit on the low side in my memory. Cool. So that's about all I have for you. I can take any questions if anybody has any ready to go, or I'll be available on the Discord as well. If anybody wants to type out their questions or ask me a little bit later, that's fine too. Is there anybody that has any burning questions right now? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Peter says, great class. Thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate that. Okay, it sounds like there probably aren't any questions. I'll talk for another few minutes because I know it can be frustrating if your connection is lagging and the instructor asks if there are any questions and you have one and just can't get there fast enough because of lag. We all have network issues to deal with. Yeah, I hope everyone found this to be useful. I actually learned a lot in putting this class together. I had kind of felt my way through a lot of this stuff over the last, actually a lot of it in the spring when the lockdown started, and I kind of didn't really have a formal way of thinking about it. So putting this class together kind of forced me to get some exercises together and organize my thoughts a little more formally. So that was really helpful for me to formulate a better understanding for myself and my own training. So I hope everyone else found it as useful as I did. Okay. Well, it sounds like there are still no questions. Thanks everybody. I really enjoyed doing this class for you. I hope, been recording this the whole time, and we'll try to make that available to you folks for future reference and to anyone who wasn't able to make it, assuming that the recording is intact. So, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining me, and Happy New Year, everybody.